In this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating a design here in CorelDRAW with EasyStone. And this design is a very basic design. It's a good design for those who are just beginning with CorelDRAW and EasyStone. But the design is very important because while it's a very basic design, very easy one for you to do, it'll give you a lot of insight as to how we tackle most any design as we begin the design process. So the design that we're going to create is a little tennis racket design, and the specifications was that the tennis racket need to kind of crisscross and be no wider than 3 inches. So it's a very small design. So what we're going to do is go over to the internet like I always do and begin our search. So I'm just going to type in tennis racket, and I always type in clip art. That will limit your selections to more basic type of designs. So we'll go ahead and see what that gives us, and we'll click on images here, and we can look through the images that Google Images gives us till we find one that kind of speaks to what we want to create. So I think let's see here. I don't know. Let's go with this one right here. I like this one. This one's good enough. So we'll right click on this and choose copy image. And then we'll come over here to CorelDRAW and we'll right click and choose paste image. Now the next thing that's really critical is that we set the size of this design, the tennis rackets, how big we want it to be. And we have a specialized function in CorelDRAW for this, or excuse me, in EasyStone for this. So we'll go to the Specialty tab and we'll choose the Set Size option, and we'll click the left edge of our tennis racket and the right edge, and it tells us it's currently 6.97 and we need it to be 3 inches. So now we know that those tennis rackets are exactly 3 inches wide. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to set these tennis rackets so one of them is completely horizontal. It'll just make it easier to design if we have it completely horizontal. And again, we have a specialized function here in EasyStone that will do this for us. So we'll select our bitmap and click on the set angle option. And what we're going to do is click on 2 points in the design that we know should be either vertical or horizontal. And we'll click on set horizontal. And that will set the tennis racket completely horizontal. Now from here, I'm going to lock this image so I cannot move it. Now in my mind, I have a good idea of what I think I want to do, but I don't know in relationship to the artwork and the stones that I want to use if that's actually going to work out the way I envision. So what I need to do is I need to drop some stones down and look at the stones compared to the artwork and decide what's going to work and what's not going to work. Well, again, I have a good idea in mind what I want to do, so I'm going to drop an SS16 stone down. So I right click on SS16 to set my stone size. Then I click on drop stone. Then I right click on SS10 and drop a stone. And then I right click on SS6 and drop a stone. Then I hit the escape key to exit out of the drop stone function. So what I think I want to do is I think for my tennis handle, for my racket handle here, I want to use SS16s. So then I'll go to the stone fill tab and I'll offset that a few times. Now for this little bendy part, I don't know what you call it, I think I want to use SS6s. So we'll drop an SS6 there. For the actual tennis racket head, I want to use SS10s. But what I want to do is I'm going to pull down a guideline so it's right there at the center point of my tennis handle, and then I'm going to take this stone and drop it right there. Now the next thing I want to do is I actually want to create a path to apply some stones to. So I'm going to grab my 3-point curve tool and I'm just going to create a path that is more or less the same shape as the head of my racket. So now I have a path that I can apply something to. I'm actually going to copy this path over here because I need this for another step later down the road. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and apply some stones. So we'll go to the stone tab, set our stone size to SS10 and hit add stones, and that will add stones around our racket. Now that I have this half done, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and mirror this across. So I mirror it, holding down my control key to mirror proportionally, and then right click to make a duplicate, and then I can pick up from center of stone to center of stone, and there is my full racket head. Now what I need to do is back over here with my SS6 stones. You can see the distance from this stone to the center guideline is a good distance. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just manually drop in a couple of stones. Why make it any more complicated than it needs to be? So all I'm doing is dragging a stone, right-clicking to make a duplicate. Now that I have these stones done, I'm going to select them all. Select one, hold my Shift key, and then I need a center point to mirror. So we'll use a big stone. We'll grab the control handle, use our control key to mirror proportionately, right-click to make a duplicate, pick up from the center of stone to the center of stone. The reason I can snap to guidelines and I can snap from center of stone to center of stone is because I have these two options right here selected. Snap to guidelines and snap to objects. Believe it or not, there's a lot of programs that do not allow you to snap from one object to another. So obviously that's pretty important when you're doing rhinestone design. Now the next thing that we need to do is all this crisscross mishmash stuff. So what we're going to do first of all is peel away our tennis racket. These stones you can see on our tennis racket head are applied to a path, so we need to get rid of those paths. So we'll select the whole design and hit delete stone paths. Now there may or may not be stones sitting on top of one another, which I already know there is, so we always want to check spacing. That's what C does, check spacing. Yes, it's 5 overlapping stones, so go ahead and dispose of those for us. And now we have our tennis racket. But I need that mishmash in between the mesh of the actual tennis racket head. So we remember earlier we created this path. We're going to mirror the path, control key to mirror proportionally, right click to make a duplicate, and then we're going to combine the path together by going to the editing tab and clicking on join paths. And now we have one solid object, which we can more or less just put right over the top of our tennis racket there. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to offset or do a contour. See this point right here, that node? We're going to snap it right to there. And then we're going to do a contour to the inside. So it just clears our stones. Now we can't see the contour until we give it a color. And now you can see we've given it a color. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and break that contour group apart. And I need just this yellow line. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some straight lines. And I'm going to offset them a certain amount. I don't know exactly how much, but let's just try 2 millimeters. And I think that's good. So we'll do that horizontally, something like that. And then we're going to take all these lines. We're going to use a special selection trick. I'm in my pick tool, right? Hold down my Alt key, click and drag. Click to give my rotation handles. Right click to make a duplicate. Okay? So there's a lot of clicking and clicking and clicking, but it's pretty straightforward, honestly, once you get knowing what you're doing. We're going to select everything, deselect that yellow line, and group all these together and apply some type of outline. Let's try 0.75 millimeters. So now you can kind of see there's our grid work. And I think that's probably going to work okay for what we're doing here. So we're going to center our yellow line to our grid work, C and E. And now it's all centered up. Now I can right click and ungroup that. And I'm just going to delete a couple of lines here. Maybe that much. Then I'm going to group these lines together again and center those. Tell you what, we're going to delete one more line, group these together, and then center that. Perfect. That's exactly what I want right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, if we look at this line in wireframe mode, you can see they're just thin lines. We need something that we can cut out of vinyl. So that's why I thickened them up a bit. But in order to cut these out of vinyl, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to convert the lines to a curve, to an object. And there, we actually have a function that does that. It's right here. It's convert outline to object. So we'll go ahead and do that. This is a group. We have to ungroup our group. And then we can convert all those to objects. So now when we go back to wireframe mode, now you can see we get a double line. And we're going to select all of these. and weld them together. So now they're all welded together. So now what we're going to do is, if we go back to enhance mode, we're going to move our yellow line on top, shift page up, and we're going to grab our paint bucket tool, and we're going to, where that yellow line is, it's actually going to stop and create us a new object. See that? See that grid work right there? We're going to get rid of our outline, and that becomes our grid work. This is what we're actually going to cut out of vinyl, or whatever we decide to how to actually create this. So now I can take this and line them up, C and E, and now we have all of our grid work for our racket. Now I know it seems like a lot of work, but honestly, I'm telling you, once you get in there and dive in there, you'll be able to do this pretty easily. So now to finish this up, we're simply going to rotate our design a little bit. We are going to mirror our design. Remember, Control key. We're going to pick up our design and move it over so they crisscross. We're going to pull this stone straight up and change it to a 30. We're going to change that stone color to peridot. Then what we might do is we might come in here and say, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's change all of our stones on our racket. We're going to mark it, select our design, and hit by size. And then we can change the color of that. We'll go ahead and change our mesh to a light gray as well. Then we'll go ahead and select one of these SS6s by size. Change that to red. And then for our hot pink, well, let's just throw in our freehand pick tool here and change that to black diamond. So that becomes our finished piece, ready to go. Let's throw a weed box around it. Then I always copy it over, make a duplicate. Actually, tell you what, before we copy it, let's throw a decal cut line around it, because this is for a decal. There are vector objects. Do we want to include those? Yes, we certainly do. So there we go. Now you can see it did something kind of weird right here. So that's okay. We can get rid of those. Just double click on that. Double click on the node to get rid of that. That's our decal cut line. Then we'll copy it over. We will right click MU. That adds a watermark, that adds some dimensions, that simulates our stones, and there is our completed design. So you can see it really was not that complicated. Now there is something that I want to talk to you about as far as this grid work. What a nightmare to weed. Could you cut this out of vinyl? Absolutely, you could cut it out of vinyl. Could you cut it out of glitter vinyl? Oh, that might be a little bit more tough, but certainly you could cut it pretty easily out of regular vinyl, but then you have to sit and weed every stinking hole, and that may take some time. To do this in rhinestones, I thought it looked better to do it in heat press material rather than trying to put rhinestones in there because it's such a small space, it just wouldn't look right. But the other thing that you could do, and this is something you got to think about, is they do make a transfer paper that you can use in your laser printers, and it does work. It's weedless, so you can actually print out this grid work and be able to apply it with an inkjet or a laser printer transfer rather than actually cut it out of HTV. So I mean, there's different options to get that mesh work in there other than cutting it out of heat transfer material. So anyhow, one of the other reasons that I decided on the different stone sizes is because I wanted the different colors, and if it would be easier just to brush in my 16s, then my 10s, then my couple of 6s here, and then we could hand place. If we wanted our little tennis ball there, we could hand place that as well. So anyhow, that is the approach, and really honestly, it probably took me 5 or 10 minutes to create this little design in real life. But now you have a good understanding of how we tackle the design and how we tackle all of our designs. It's just, understanding there's a process, and once you follow that process, you can create just about anything you want to create pretty simply. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and thanks for watching.